Hey guys, last time we left off, we were creating the controller for our courses and using scaffolding to generate all of the views. I left you with the challenge to go ahead and create the same controller and views for our students table. So I'm going to do that quickly, just in case you probably didn't know what to do. And I'll show you how simple it really is. So we right click our controllers table, we go to add controller, select MVC5 controller with views using entity framework, click add. Then we select our model class. In this case, it would be student. Then we see that most of the information is already populated because that's what we did last time. So Visual Studio is keeping track of our activities thus far, making it easier for us to just move along. This time I will use async controller actions just to show you the slight difference in the code. Everything else checks out, so I'll just click add. At the end of the scaffolding exercise, our new controller is generated for students. And we see that it looks very similarly to what we're used to from our courses controller. Additionally, if we look in our views table, we'll see that we have a new folder for students with the same set of views that were present in courses. Now, if you take a closer look at your controller, you'll see that you have a few new syntax words, namely async and await. These are parts of the code that got generated from when we said use async functions. And pretty much async and await are a code pattern that allow our methods to run asynchronously. So this is in keeping with C#'s need for efficiency and allowing multiple threads to run in one application. Outside of that, we see that most of the code looks pretty much the same if we compare it with our courses controller code. Now in this video, we want to focus particularly on making modifications to our database as we go along. We're using a database first coding pattern, which means that our database would have existed and then we build the application around it. Or our database is constantly evolving as we flesh out and map out the functions needed for our application. Now the challenge with this approach is that as we change our database, we have to update our models and also update our code. Now, I just generated this code, all of our views and this controller based on the fields that were present in our database table. So if I look into the database, I'll see that I have three fields: student ID, last name, first name, and enrollment date, which means that everything that would have been generated around those particular fields. So if I take a look at my control view, I'll see that I have a form generated for last name, first name, and enrollment date. Now, what if I needed to put in the student's middle name? I left that out of the database initially, and now I need to include it in what I have going on. So I'm going to go into views, into my SQL Server Object Explorer, drill down into my database instance, and find my database School Management DB, find the table, and make a modification to my student table. So I right click and then click View Designer. I will then proceed to add the middle name column to this table. So I'll just come here, say middle name. I want it to be a nvarchar 50, just like the other names, and then I click update to commit that change. Once that update is done, I now need to update my database model to be cognizant of the fact that there is a new column in this table or in that particular class. So if I bring up my EDMX, I'll see that the current student does not have a middle name column. So I right click in the empty space and I click Update Model from Database. This will then give me a little wizard. I can go to Refresh, click Tables, and then click Finish. At the end of that process, we see that we have middle name added here as a column. Now that leaves me to have to update all of our generated views to know that there's a middle name that needs to be edited or added in our create view. So I'll just Control Shift and D and make sure that everything builds successfully. After a successful build, then I will go ahead and find my views that need to be edited. So I'll go down to my views folder, look for students, and then first edit or create view. So I need to pretty much replicate the structure that I have here for last name and first name and set it up for middle name. Considering that they're all very similar data types and data constructs, I can just copy and paste this block of code and modify it so that we know we want middle name. So this is generating a label for the first name. I'll just change this to middle name. And you can see that the IntelliSense is picking up that there is indeed and in fact a column in the model called middle name. So I just click enter, and then I will do this for the edit for and also the validation message. I will also need to do this for my edit page, so I can just copy this, considering that the edit page looks very similarly to our create page. And I will just create some space here and paste the same code. And once again, our model on our edit page is student, and so it knows of the new property called middle name. An additional step so that we can browse to this newly created index page is to modify our layouts and add it to our nav bar. So I'll just click on courses, Control D to duplicate that line, and then I'll say students. And also we will change the controller name to students. We can save this and then go ahead and debug. Once our window launches, we will see that we have the link to our students page, so we can click that and be navigated to our list of students. We know that we didn't add anything to the database, and also you'll see that even though we added middle name to the model, there is no middle name column being set up here. We did, however, modify the create page, so we do have middle name here on the create page. And if I go ahead and create, and then do note that enrollment date allows us to type in our free text. So if you recall, I was saying that there are certain situations where you may want to add custom controls to our text box, and edit for has some limitations. So we'd want to probably change the data type associated with this input from text and set it to datetime, so we can at least get a datetime picker or find a jQuery or JavaScript calendar control to put there. We can do that at a later date, but for now I'll just put a generic date and then click create. Now if we take a look at this, we see that our newly created record is here. Once again, on index we're not displaying the middle name. However, if we click edit, we'll see that we have a slight anomaly with our program. We did not do enough to make sure that middle name was going to be populated upon create. As a result, though we added the text box to the edit form, there is no middle name displayed because there was no middle name committed to the database when we clicked create. Okay, so we still have a bit of work to do. Now going back to our code, we can come out of debug mode for a second and see what additional work needs to be done to ensure that our create function works. If we take a look at the data, we will also see, so we right click our table and click view data, and we see that middle name was indeed and in fact sent across as a null. That is because at the time of creation, even though we put the text box and the controls there for the middle name, we did not tell the controller that it should indeed and in fact look for a middle name when it is receiving data from our view. So if we take a look at our controller really quickly, and we go to the create host function, we'll see that we have something here that says bind include, and we have some parameters. Do note student ID, last name, first name, enrollment date, and no middle name. Now, what is happening in this include equals followed by this string of fields coming from our student model is we are looking for specific properties from this class that should be included when we compile our object and save changes. So if I made the modification here that we should take student ID, last name, first name, enrollment date, and tack on middle name, and this part is case sensitive, so please be sure to write in the same way that the property appears in the class. And for the edit, we can also go ahead and include middle name and go into debug mode and attempt to add another student. Then we should no longer have this problem. So let us try that. Now in debug mode, I'm going to attempt to add another. Then I click create. And then we have a second student record. Now if I look at the edit, then you will see our value coming back. Unlike our first one where there was no value committed to the database. Now if we look at the details page to see all of what we need to say about the student, details really and truly should list every single thing about the student here. Note there is no middle name, so we still have a bit of work to do to get middle name to show up in our details page. So I'll just quickly go over to details, and we're still in debug mode. Find the details view, and we can see here that details page looks a bit differently from the other pages. It is predominantly using the HTML helper function for display name for and display for. So we can just take this and replicate this kind of logic and insert middle name. So I'll just put middle name and middle name, save, and then refresh our page. And there we go. Last name, first name, and our new addition to the family, middle name. Also, we have enrollment date. There are things we can do aesthetically to make our dates more attractive. Now, a possibly easier way to have accommodated all of these changes to our database and our subsequent controller and view code would have been to regenerate our controller and views based on the changes in our model. The danger to this, however, is that any changes you would have made would have been discarded and replaced with the generic code. So be very careful when you are going to make changes to your database, and be cognizant of the fact that you probably want to do it manually to maintain whatever code has preceded this change. Anyhow, thank you for tuning in, and I do hope you found value in this lesson. See you next time.